My name is Basma Isa, and I'm the Head of Policy, ESG, and Sustainability at FIDIC. The title of our webinar today is From Ambition to Action, Scaling Sustainable Infrastructure Through Technology and Ecosystem Collaboration. It's an important issue for our industry to get to grips with. We'll be discussing today the growing pressures that organizations face in delivering sustainable infrastructure, including where they are investing and how planning, design, and collaboration can help address these challenges. We will also explore how firms are leveraging technologies such as AI to enable and achieve more sustainable outcomes across the infrastructure lifecycle. Our expert panel will offer their insights into balancing investment decisions, driving innovation, improving resilience, and delivering both business and environmental impact. FIDIC has a key focus on sustainability. It's important to our members and important to their member firms, and it is clearly crucial to the infrastructure sector as a whole. At FIDIC, our approach to sustainability is guided by systems thinking and a strong commitment to practical impact. Our focus is not only to respond to climate and net zero imperatives, but also to actively shape the way infrastructure is planned, delivered, and maintained across the asset life cycle and around the world. And at the core of our efforts is the FIDIC Climate Change Charter, which is increasingly being referenced across our membership and industry partners. And the charter reframes climate action as a shared professional obligation, one that spans procurement, project design, delivery, and long-term operations. It also calls for a transformation in how infrastructure systems are conceived, embedding carbon metrics, climate risk, and resilience from the very outset, rather than treating them as an afterthought. And complementing the Climate Change Charter is also FIDIC's Carbon Management Framework, or the CMF, which is a sector-specific, industry-led framework supporting infrastructure stakeholders in embedding carbon management and accountability across the infrastructure lifecycle, regardless of geography and regardless of the level of market maturity of the organization. And crucially, we know that sustainability cannot be addressed in isolation from technology. FIDIC's work has highlighted how digital tools, when designed and used responsibly, can support carbon transparency, lifecycle decision-making, and resilience planning. And whether through digital twins, AI-assisted modeling, or emissions tracking, the intersection of climate and digital transformation remains a high priority on our agenda. It is also a high priority for our speakers today, and we have an excellent panel joining us. We have Marta Bouchard, Director of Sustainability Solutions Strategy at Autodesk, who will bring the perspective of technology platforms, ecosystems, and the role of connected data enabling more sustainable outcomes. From ORIS, we have Nicolas Miravalls, CEO of ORIS, who will bring the perspective of how technology and data can actually enable better carbon and sustainability decisions during the early planning and design stages of infrastructure. And offering the perspective of the engineering and consulting industry, we're delighted to welcome Andreas Linnet, Senior Chief Consultant and Global Decarbonization Lead at Trimble. Welcome to all three of you, and thank you for joining us today. One theme we will hear throughout today's discussion is the importance of collaboration and partnership. No single organization has all the answers, and delivering sustainable infrastructure would always require industry, clients, technology providers, and other stakeholders to work collaboratively together. So with that, let's start by looking at the central theme of today's discussion, how we move from ambition to action. Marta, let me start with you. When you think about the phrase from ambition to action, what does it mean for sustainable infrastructure today? And where do you see the biggest gap between ambition and actual delivery?
Thank you, Basma. It's great to be here with everybody. Ambition and action are really important words. So let's unpack that. So at Autodesk, we are working with organizations across the infrastructure lifecycle. We're here to help teams make better decisions by connecting data and technology and driving more collaboration. What we're seeing across the infrastructure space is that sustainability has moved from aspiration to more accountability. In the past few years, we've seen regulations increase, we've seen new frameworks emerge. These are great because they're intended to help organizations both set targets and put structures in place to meet sustainability requirements, and that drives great ambition. But today what we're hearing, our leaders are asking a lot more practically how to repeatably deliver low carbon and more resilient infrastructure solutions while also needing to balance cost and risk and performance. So it's really getting into the how. What we're seeing is sort of a challenge around sustainability, maybe still residually like sitting as the separate workflow or consulting service that might potentially be disconnected from everyday project processes that are critical to shape decisions. So we know that teams are planning and engineering and delivering infrastructure projects, but they might be working with fragmented data, disconnected tools and workflows, or maybe inconsistent ways in which they would be doing that work across their teams. And so that makes the action part really, really hard to tuck into the delivery they're already doing to be on time and on budget. So ultimately, I think if we want to drive these sustainable outcomes at scale, we really need to make sustainability data become really trusted and usable, almost as much as we would financial data on our projects, so that teams can make those decisions across the life cycle.
Thank you very much, Marta. It is quite important to give this importance to systems and to turn the commitments to decisions. Andreas, let me bring you in from a practitioner perspective. Where do you see that gap playing out in projects and with clients?
I think that, as you just heard, we see a lot of clients with big ambitions, strong ambitions, different commitments on policy levels. But the real challenge is translating some of those ambitions or all of them into decisions on a specific project. We should be asking questions, what do we build? Where do we build? What materials do we use? What do we ask from the supply chain? And how do we measure progress? I think the biggest gap is actually not intent, but I think it's implementation. And we need a really strong workflow that is repeatable to help us with this. And all the different tools and data out there, it comes in different shapes and sizes. And I think we really need to make sure that we can streamline all of that.
Thank you, Andreas. And staying with you for a moment, what do you think has changed most in the last 2 to 3 years in how infrastructure organizations approach sustainability within their businesses?
I think if I'm putting on my positive goggles here, the biggest change is that sustainability has moved from being a specialist topic to being more of a business and delivery topic. I think a few years ago, carbon accounting was more of a quantifiable exercise, maybe done on flagship projects. And now we actually see quite a few clients asking much more specific questions. They're asking, what should the baseline be for the project? How do we measure progress? Where are the hotspots? What's the reduction potential? What is it going to cost me? Can I save any money on the materials that we're not using? And all this, they want this understanding of what does this mean for my resilience, for my long-term asset value, basically down to what does it mean for cost. And I think that requires a much more detailed approach to the work that we're doing. And it's definitely something that I'm very pleased to see.
Thank you, Andreas. It's always interesting to see the client perspective and how they're seeing the changes coming on. Nicola, if I come to you now, are you seeing the same shift from your perspective, or would you highlight something differently?
Definitely the same shift. I would just add that we are experiencing two transitions at the same time now. The environmental transition on one side that we are discussing, and also the digital transformation of the companies, of the systems. And those two are coming kind of helping and nurturing one another. That's important because traditional engineering has pain to face all those challenges and the level of accuracy which is needed. So we definitely see more requirements across geographies, across the value chain, and the need for systematic answers to address those requirements with the right efficiency, of course, the right time management and the right quality. So I think it's really a must-have today to build a system to have this capacity to work at scale and define the right scope and the right approach to it, whoever you are in the value chain, actually.
Thank you, Nicola. And this brings us to the pressures that are driving many of these changes. And Nicola, let's stay with that changing landscape. Which industry pressures do you think are shaping decision making most strongly right now? And is it regulation and mandatory reporting, client expectation, climate risk, or something different?
It's an interesting question because what we observe is that it's a real top-down transformation that we are observing now, from finance regulations to operations, and those regulations are taking different forms depending on which level of the value chain it's addressing. So engineers will have to report better on their carbon emission or on their projected emissions. Authorities and owners themselves will have to report and gather their carbon quantities into their nationally determined contribution, for example. So you have plenty of tools and systems now working together in terms of regulations. But I would add that beyond regulation, responsibility and leadership is probably the main engine of the transformation, because companies now can use this as a new engine for leading their market, transforming their market, be a kind of a role model. So this is what we can also call tech for good, right? So tech for good is important, and results and impact that this is providing are also very rewarding. So we should not forget that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicola. And it's clear that organizations are responding to several pressures simultaneously, and no single actor can address those challenges alone. And this brings us to the role of collaboration. We've talked about the pressures driving change. Let's turn now to what it takes to respond to them, and particularly the role of collaboration across the infrastructure ecosystem. Marta, perhaps I can start with you. Why is collaboration across the infrastructure ecosystem so critical if we want to scale sustainable and resilient infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks. I love this question. It hits a little soft spot for me because I think it's so important to realize that no one person, no one company, no one organization can solve sustainability alone. It's especially true with infrastructure. It's a very complex industry. It involves a lot of stakeholders, and therefore collaboration is really critical. And it's, sustainability for any of these projects we might try to drive, it's not going to scale if we're celebrating isolated innovation by one person somewhere, right? The fact that, to deliver large infrastructure project that might scale boundaries in space and in jurisdiction means that owners and designers and engineers and contractors and operators and regulators, and there's so many people that are involved. Technology providers like Autodesk are just one player of this whole ecosystem that makes it all happen. And so with these large scale outcomes, I just think it's super important to realize that collaboration is the key to success. We're also seeing that it's becoming an opportunity for competitive advantage. The ability to work with others, I think, is a huge opportunity for creating an advantage in the marketplace right now. Because the biggest challenges around decarbonization, resilience, of course, resource efficiency, they don't really care about human contrived organizational boundaries. The like water flows, for example, they're not worried about who owns the land. The water's going to flow. So we really need to be working across what we would call sort of organizational boundaries to really address the largest challenges with infrastructure. When it comes to the technology side of that, again, a small role in a very large system. What we're really trying to drive with our platform is to connect that ecosystem through technology. We have an open platform, interoperable data, trusted partnerships that can help remove any friction between stakeholders because there are still people involved. We think that can allow everyone to work from a more consistent and shared state, and that can help drive sustainability performance. So actually, Basma, great to have someone like you and FEDIC here today, because organizations like that can help us all move towards greater alignment. We love to participate in these types of things because without alignment, we might be otherwise fragmented or siloed, but with alignment, I think we create this sort of environment for change. So yeah, thanks for that great question.
Thank you, Marta. And I think it's a very interesting point, talking about how collaboration can create comparative advantage. And as an economist, this really makes a lot of sense, which also needs to remind us all the time that we need to showcase the economic and the business case of sustainability and resilient infrastructure, because this is what it's all about. And Nicola, from your perspective, what does effective collaboration look like in practice?
I would like to emphasize a bit on expertise here because collaboration is the right puzzle of different expertises together. And the expertise is really required to be at the expected level. We have a huge task in front of us to decarbonize, systematize, and have a resilient industry at the end of the day. So expertise is absolutely mandatory. And this is in different fields. And this is about quality. This is about compliance. This is about data accuracy. This is about technological systems. So it takes really a lot of effort to be there. And I would just like to point out an example. I mean, Marta just talked about the tech side of it. And that's really an ambition for our industry to also transform into this tech and digital side. But for some aspects like sustainability, carbon quantification, carbon reporting, those are really niche, even though those are niche for big dogs eventually, because those are big fields, right? But they are still niche in terms of content, and the collaboration here is absolutely critical, and it's giving great result when you have those sectors associating together, and companies like us or others teaming up with bigger technology providers like Autodesk. I mean, that's really making sense.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. I mean, of course, one of the big challenges would always be that infrastructure is still delivered across quite fragmented systems and organizations. And that's why this kind of collaboration and conversations we have now between our organizations is of huge value. Marta, if I come back to you again, where do you see the biggest silos today between owners, designers, contractors, technology providers, and regulators? And how do those silos affect our ability to achieve sustainability goals?
Yeah, well, representing a technology company, I think we have a lot to say about this, because when we're speaking to customers, one of the most common challenges that I hear, at least, is, it's not a lack of commitment to want to do some kind of sustainability initiative or drive that outcome. What we're generally hearing is a lack of continuity across their people, the processes, and the technology where we can come in to drive change. And especially there, it's an opportunity for us to directly influence and maybe try to de-silo some of those challenges. So where we're seeing that between those stakeholders, it varies, but carbon data in different places, sustainability metrics or benchmarks, as Andrea said, design data, construction data, not always in the same place. A lot of times this information lives in different systems. They're managed by different stakeholders. They may or may not have access to it. So as projects move from an idea to a reality, information sometimes might get recreated or reinterpreted or just lost because of the different pieces of technology and the different people and processes that need to make it come together. That obviously drives inefficiencies and reduces the goals that we want to meet. So what we're hearing is we need to connect our workflows, we need trusted information, connected data, and it really needs to follow across in what we call the asset lifecycle. So a road could be an asset, a bridge, a water treatment plant, infrastructure could be a lot of different assets, sometimes a collection of assets, but the data needs to flow with that asset across its life cycle. It can't just be kind of tossed over the fence to somebody else. It needs to be part of the way practitioners already work in any role that they sit in. And it's not about accessing more data. I know there's a lot of conversation right now around, I just need more data. It's like, well, you need confidence that the data that you want is where it needs to be, that you can retrieve it from a logical place, that it's traceable, and that you can share it and use it across your teams. So when we think about how to reduce the silos and reduce the friction, we're thinking right now from our side on the tech side is how does that data move across teams so that they can make those decisions? I mean, the practitioners really know this first and foremost. I'm really just representing the voice of that.
Yes, thank you, Marta. And I think it's always much better, even from the sustainability side, to make what we already have work instead of trying to come up with something or a new system. And can I just quickly remind our audience, if you have any relevant questions, to put it in the chat, and we will come back to it at the end, time permitting. Andreas, what about you? What's the client perspective here? Where do you see these silos creating real challenges in practice? And does that resonate with your experience on projects as well?
Oh, definitely. We have, I think, in our engineering world, quite a few silos once in a while, and we're all working to break those down. To come back a little bit on some of the pressures that we are seeing from the market on our projects and our engineering solutions here, I think some of those pressures, the positive ones, are helping to break down the silos. I'm specifically thinking about our resource scarcity. In Denmark, we are running out of sand, as a very concrete example. No pun intended. So we really need to make sure that we optimize our resource consumption. We need to make sure that we can fulfill and live up to the requirements from the different clients. And by doing all of those things, we are breaking down some of the silos that we are seeing historically. Not so long ago, we had a client demanding or requesting for us to be able to bid on a project that we needed a sustainability manager with 10 years of experience, of documented experience. So that's not something that every organization have, and if you have it, you probably don't have that many of them. So luckily we do have that in Rample, but it just goes to show that from having no requirements to having very specific requirements that are not so easy to gain, that also shows the intent of the client and the market there. So you really need to be on top of this. Another common silo I see that we are battling quite a bit is but also again has to go with client requirements. But a sustainability specialist will typically do a carbon quantification, at least historically here. But if that calculation doesn't happen early enough, and if it's just a snapshot, then the real heroes here, the real designers, the real experts, they cannot implement and utilize that kind of knowledge when the decisions needs to be made. So we need to adapt to earlier quantification, we need to adapt a better way of working with carbon management here. And by doing so, we can break down some of those silos and get the very important and right information early into the project, make sure that our engineers use it, our experts use it, and we can use it for making better decisions, more informed decisions here. Another silo, which I think is very important, is whenever you design something, when we have some great solutions, they need to be backed up by tender requirements, because if you don't have the proper requirements in the tender documents, then most likely those initiatives and very well thought ideas will not make it into the final project. So you need to have a strong focus on writing down the very hardcore requirements that are non-negotiable to achieve the level of performance that is envisioned by the client and envisioned by the experts on the project.
Thank you, Andreas. And I think this raises an important question about how we move beyond individual initiatives and make sustainable practices more scalable. Nicola, how can industry partnerships help us move from pilots towards practices that are genuinely repeatable and scalable, just to build up on this idea?
I think consistency is required here. And I would like to talk a bit about consistency, because the time for scientific consensus has gone. I think we have this scientific consensus. We know about the methods, we know about the scopes, we know about the calculation systems, we know about everything. So really the time now is to have this consistency in place, so that we use whatever the scale, actually that's very important as well. You might have consistency at any level of the value chain, at any scale you're in charge with, be it at the project level, or at the region level, at the national level, at the company level, whatever. But you need this consistency. That's really important. Otherwise, you are comparing numbers which are not really comparable. And the ultimate goal, which is, as Andreas just pointed, the ultimate goal is to reduce, optimize, find the extra mile, right? And make sure that we point our attention to the right topics. And in order to do so, we just need to have a very strong, solid system. And not only it gives better accuracy and better consistency, but it's also a guarantee for speed and time saving, time management, and it's definitely a guarantee for efficiency at scale. And then we can discuss, and then we can talk about being at the right level in terms of practice at scale, repeatable, and yeah, transforming the industry really.
Oh, thank you, Nicola. And Andreas, let me bring you in here again from an industry perspective. How do you see the balance between developing tools and solutions internally and working with existing solutions and partners in the market?
I think that, I mean, if there's one word here or one sentence we need to take away from today, is that repeatable workflow is king. If we can have repeatable and scalable practices, we can move from pilots, we can move from the good ideas, from the times we have very engaged clients, and we can bring it into everyday life, everyday way of working, and we can scale our solutions. I think that's repeatable workflow is the most important thing. And a funny example, or a good example, is that we've seen when it comes to bridge design, or really any kind, but what comes to mind is a bridge design, that when carbon specialists and cost specialists work together early, bring the information in early, carbon reductions and especially cost reductions can come from very normal engineering solutions and decisions. Optimize geometry, reducing unnecessary use of material like concrete and steel, and choosing better specification, and most importantly, challenging default assumptions. If we do that early enough, if we allow that to happen early enough and have that in our process, that can bring about great change and great performance on different engineering projects we see here. But it can only happen if the right information reaches the right people early enough in the project.
Thank you, Andreas. Actually, before moving on with the questions, I can take one of the questions from the floor, from the audience. It is for everyone on the panel. It says, I'm working in wet utilities underground infrastructure. How can we move towards the sustainability, not in terms of material or operation and maintenance, but in terms of design and perspective? Would someone like to take the question?
That was an easy question right there. Is it in the chat again?
It's in the chat, yes.
Yes.
From Dipanshu Sharma.
Yes. I think there's a chance I might be misunderstanding the question here, but I think first and foremost, whenever we look at a potential project, if we really have to scale it up, you have to challenge the brief. If there's something that we need to build, if we need to build it for a very good reason, all right, then how do we do that most optimally? How can we make sure that by doing this project, we will enhance the society in which it's designed to help? Is it scaled appropriately? Is there overcapacity? Is it only just right? Can we try and have a holistic approach to our projects? I think that's a really important way of looking at it, so that we already looking at it from a life cycle perspective can see what is the best way of what do we really need to build, and how do we make sure we can adapt to future use, including the climate changes that we see out there. Is this resilient enough to withstand what we can foresee and maybe even what we cannot foresee? And can we doing it in a proper manner? But I think whenever you are talking about making sure that something is sustainable, you need to make sure that the materials you're using is optimized, that the operational is optimized, and that the scalability of the project fits not only now, but in 10, 50, 80 years down the line. I think that's super important. And then at one point, we all have to start talking about compensation, or through projects making the world a better place. Can we, have some very different approaches to how we compensate for the negative impact that you will have when you do a project? There's no net zero projects out there without some sort of compensation, but how can we make sure that compensation lifts up the society in which the project is placed?
Thank you, Andres. And I think it's very relevant to your earlier point about repeatable workflow and scale. It's something to keep in mind as well. So we've talked about collaboration and scale, but technology is increasingly changing both the decisions we can make and how early we can make them. Marta, going back to you, where do you see technology really moving the needle today for sustainable infrastructure planning and design?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, very exciting things happening in technology right now. I think it isn't any just one technology. I'm not going to say AI right now. I'm not. I am going to say it's a little bit more around the convergence of existing and new technologies, right? A lot of the stuff that we've been working with for years is and needs to accelerate in coming together, right? The convergence of connected data, the experience we're all having now with cloud collaboration, the emerging development of digital twins, the fact that we need interoperability between all of it, and then with it comes the ability to do automation and leverage AI, right? So I really do think there's a lot coming together and converging. It's exciting. It's helping organizations, I think, truly move from measuring outcomes historically kind of after the fact to being able to equip and empower people to actively shape outcomes much more so during the decision-making process, earlier in the process. So I think that's one of the real benefits of this really incredible transformation that we're going through right now. What this means for infrastructure leaders, especially people in the planning and design space, I would say, the goal isn't around just adopting some technology just for the sake of saying you're using it, right? I think it's much more around using technology so that it enables teams to understand those trade-offs, to make those decisions sooner, to evaluate alternatives. And ultimately, that can bring together the assessment of carbon and cost and resilience and performance and the other criteria that are so complex in these realities. We are seeing a big demand for connecting sustainability workflows. I mentioned that before. We have to bring it all together so that we can consider more complex, frankly, systemic challenges like resilience that is not one thing. It's resilience is an ecosystem of things that need to be considered across a life cycle and across many aspects. I want to go back to something that Andreas said that I really love. You said, Andreas, repeatability is king. I just completely agree. I think as technology changes and this convergence happens, I believe that should really help us accelerate the ability to repeat our workflows and to build that scalability. Because when they're otherwise kind of siloed, or one company does it one way or another company does it another, it makes it incredibly difficult for the collective to do this work at scale. And then, sure, maybe one company has their own repeatable workflows, but then we go out into the world and we try to benchmark against each other, and it's apples, oranges, and bananas because we've all done it differently. So again, I think there's a lot of changing right now in technology. It's a big question, but I do believe that we're moving in fast times, and it's really exciting that this convergence can help folks make informed decisions and then get closer to those sustainable outcomes.
Thank you, Marta. It's a very interesting concept, and it's always repeatability, standardization, scalability. That's a lot of the values that, from FIDIC's point of view as well, we try to support our members with. Nicola, what's your perspective on this? What are you seeing in the industry, and where is technology making the greatest practical difference in your point of view?
I think I will come back on to the point of consistency, where technology is enabling this consistency. So each of us in our regular practice, we should define and choose our scope, our methods, our goals as well, and make it a workflow. Then this workflow can be repeatable, can be consistent across the different divisions, the different countries, the different projects. So it's a lot of change management also in terms of achieving that. Technology is absolutely required because the level of data, information, systems is too much again, and technology is helping get to that level. But let's not forget the educational part that goes with it. We really need also to change our industry with trainings, with services, with support, so that technology is accepted and is really bringing to the industry what it needs to bring. So we should not be fearing technology. We should adopt and embrace it, but there is an additional component of support and transformation that goes with it.
Thank you, Nicolas. And we can't talk about technology without talking about AI, which is clearly becoming an increasingly important part of this conversation. So let's look more specifically at how AI and digital technologies are changing infrastructure decision-making. Marta, if you can tell us, how are AI and digital technologies changing the way infrastructure teams make sustainability decisions throughout planning, design, and delivery?
Yes, of course. AI is a really exciting time. So I think about AI again within the ecosystem of other technologies that it's building and learning from. AI really becomes hopefully an augmented expertise, right? It is something that can augment the human work that we've already been doing and we know and love. I think the real opportunity for AI is around how to help experts work more effectively, give them access to the insights that maybe they couldn't practically generate, or at least not quickly generate on their own. I mean, it's sort of notoriously speeding up so many things. It can analyze complex data, it can evaluate scenarios now, it can identify patterns, and it can definitely reduce time. And we all are loving how it might reduce repetitive tasks. But again, like any technology, AI isn't a solution in and of itself. It doesn't just stand alone. And I don't think we should think of it as a quick fix. I do think the opportunity with AI is if we're applying it to the right problems, it can be a huge opportunity for infrastructure and sustainability. We know that infrastructure teams are already navigating complex decisions. And then when you roll in the sustainability space of carbon or resilience and materials, it's a lot to try to pull together. And where I think AI can really help practitioners is to help understand those trade-offs earlier and with greater confidence, like the ability for it to, become part of that convergence I talked about a moment ago and sort of connect the dots. I think the value is there. We still have a lot to learn. AI is very much changing by the day. And so we're evolving as an industry with that. But I would say the criticality of this to work well as we head into the future and as AI continues to evolve, it'll be about the quality of the underlying data being good so that we know we have quality of insights coming out of that data. So where I talked about convergence a moment ago around connecting and being able to trust and interoperate across technology systems, the work of AI is only going to be part of that system if it's working off of a strong data foundation so that it's not, scaling bad data or scaling inconsistency, or worse, is just perpetuating something wrong like that we don't want. But AI built on trusted data and using sort of AI as an augmenter to human expertise, that's where I think the magic can happen, because we can really accelerate the accessibility and the potential for more sustainability outcomes.
Thank you, Marta. And Andreas, how does that look from the perspective of firms and project teams actually using those technologies?
First of all, I think it's correct that the solutions or the quantification is not better than the quality of the data that's being utilized, the methodology, the governance, and in reality, the skilled people utilizing it. We really need to make sure that we speed up the repeatable tasks, but that we keep the human spirit intact, and that we have very skilled people looking at it here. For me, AI is not the point for its own sake, but it can definitely automate all of the things that normally takes a lot of time, like mapping, identifying hotspots, material alternatives. It can suggest some of those. And really what's really exciting is that it can learn from, we call it maybe an experience-based database or something else, where we can learn from previous projects so that we can share the excellent solutions for the different types of projects that we're doing out there. I think that is really, really important. The design team can greatly benefit from seeing or immediately see even the changes in material geometry and how everything else affects the performance of the project. And if they can get that almost instantaneously, then that becomes truly a part of the live design conversation that the real experts have. And that is where the value really lies here. Of course, if they can get that even faster and everything else moves up, it's good. But I think it's important that carbon reporting becomes a little bit more of not as much as something that we state, but something that becomes maybe we can call it carbon intelligence inside the design. We need to make sure that we utilize all the learnings that we have to come up with the best possible designs.
Thank you, Andreas. And Nicola, anything you would like to add from your perspective?
I won't recall the repetitive task because this has been said and that cannot be repeated, of course. But I just want to add maybe AI is inviting itself at different levels also of the industry, of the practice. So it enables, for example, to develop faster use cases because we have plenty of use cases in our industry. It's not only about decarbonization or resilience or circularity. There are plenty that are not yet solved. I'm thinking here about maybe social impact, job creations. So AI helps accelerate, develop new use cases. It helps develop and test ideas as well, because we can go faster to different questions. But coming to the project environment and the more regular practice of our work, the digital twins are ahead of construction. So with AI, you can simulate, you can iterate, you can observe the reaction of different parameters change and things like that. So this is really accelerating us. I'll just give you a quick example. We are using typically a data bank of 700 resilience adaptation measures for climate resilience on linear projects. 700 is a lot, but they don't apply to all exposures and vulnerabilities. So this is a very fastidious work when you need to do it manually. So this is a great task for AI. AI can do that in a click or two. And you have something that you master. You still have the engineer looking behind and making sure that things are well done. It's not about giving the keys to AI. It's just about using it for what it is.
Thank you, Nicola. And we've heard a lot about the opportunities technology creates, but technology alone is clearly not enough. The quality of the outcomes would depend on the systems, the information, and the people behind it. And I see in the chat a question actually about this. So it's going to be one of our questions anyway. So Marta, what foundations need to be in place, whether quality, data, clear workflows or skills or governance, so AI can genuinely drive better sustainability outcomes? And what are the examples you can share with us?
Yeah, that is the question of the day for everything, even beyond sustainability. Let me just be clear. This definitely applies to any application of AI. I think there's sort of a tendency right now to first focus on AI as sort of the newest darling in the world, when in reality, I think the data foundations, as well as like sort of the what and the who is using AI, need to be really considered. AI is incredibly powerful, but it's only as effective as the foundations beneath it. I actually think what was just said about Nicola, I love that. Like, you don't just want to give AI the keys, like absolutely not. So I guess I would say there's three things that I think are critical foundations to sort of lean into this AI future. The first is the trusted data. I think that's number one, but also trust in the systems and trust in the people. So let me break that down a little bit. So trusted data is number one. Sustainability decisions, or really any decision, even if you're ordering a pair of shoes or you're going to buy something on the internet, doesn't matter. Any decision you're making, it's only as good as the data behind it. So when it comes to sustainability, we know that many organizations right now really struggle with like fragmented information, inconsistent sustainability baselines or benchmarks, and a lot of manual processes. So just applying AI to that could risk connecting together or maybe scaling the wrong data or attempting to fetch data and the AI agent chooses incorrectly. So we really need to think of data as being a trusted foundation. And if we don't know what data it's working on, you're already off to the wrong start. So that's critical. But then with that data, the second thing comes is trusted systems. So this means like standards, governance, and interoperability. Those types of like really critical systems are part of how the sort of setting up an AI process can make information be faster and connected easier. But it also is critical because it's about setting up the rules, like the rules of operation. AI needs systems boundaries and it needs context. It doesn't just come in and like easy button fix something. If you've already been doing something inconsistently or you've got methodologies that are all over the place, the AI might just repeat what you've already been doing. So it's really important to set up a foundation that is based on what humans would otherwise do, which is set up consistent, scalable, repeatable practices. The AI needs to be trained on skills and it needs governance on what's bad or what's good, so it can actually operate as a trusted system as part of the whole. And the third thing I'd say about the people, sort of like how do you have trusted people? So I said this before, that AI is really powerful when it can augment human expertise. It can't just know everything without sort of a human in the loop to really continue to guide how an AI would be deployed. So humans are ultimately accountable for decisions. At the end of the day, whoever signs the contract, it's not your AI agent, right? It's a human. And so we really need people to know how to best deploy AIs to use it to its greatest advantage. I think the organizations today that are going to benefit from this evolution with AI right now are the ones who are investing in the skills and the competence and the judgment of their teams using AI. And maybe it'd be useful you asked for an example. I'm going to kind of give a hypothetical one, but just imagine you have an infrastructure project. Maybe it's modeled in some kind of CAD or BIM software, and you want to extract all that information, like a bill of materials of sorts. And then you ask your AI agent, like, hey, what's the carbon footprint of my project? Very reasonable question. Well, in order for that AI system to know the answer or even begin to guide you towards an answer, I'll just use an example of what it needs to know. And you have to be like the carbon data that it needs to answer the carbon question has to be relevant, has to be regional, has to be granular enough that it's like right size for your project. Otherwise, it might just pull carbon data from, I don't know, the internet somewhere, and that's not necessarily going to be the right data. With regards to systems, the AI needs to interoperate with other systems. So if you ask it to do a carbon footprint, and all it has is, say, a building information model, or like a BIM model for that project, well, that's all it has. It might be missing critical context, like something that came from outside that software, something that came from other consultants, maybe specifications that are in written form versus modeled form. So that's a critical part of the system and how the AI needs governance around what the rules are. And lastly, just the human expertise. You either need to have an expert, Andreas talked about this, like sort of sustainability experts, that either knows what a good carbon footprint should look like and then can look at the results and kind of can interrogate it, or that trusted human should set it up for the AI. So it's given the rules of engagement, and then you know that the process the AI follows is trusted. But again, a human kind of has to vet the right and the wrong. So yeah, those are three big things that are foundational for AI. I think we can get there, but you have to be really cognizant of the interrelations of data and systems and people.
Thank you, Marta, very much. And thank you for also pointing out to the importance of upskilling and capacity building when it comes to AI. As you said, decisions are only as good as the data it's fed, and it must be a human factor somewhere in the loop that helps with this. And it's not just the upskilling and capacity building on organizational level, but it's also institutionally as well. It's very important.
Yeah.
And Andreas, how about you, your point of view on this? Are there any practical examples for you or lessons you would add from an implementation perspective?
Well, yeah, first of all, I definitely want to support what has already been said here, but I think we can boil it down to the fact that we still need skills. We need engineers and experts, we need sustainability specialists, digital specialists, project managers, and we all need to work together. I would say that AI can definitely support engineering judgment in so many ways, but it cannot replace it. I also think transparency is super important. If any kind of data, carbon cost data, is going to influence design and procurement and how we will construct a given project, what to invest in, maybe even, we have to be able to explain exactly where the results comes from. And if we don't have proper governance and we don't have all the skills, we don't have the good data quality, repeatable workflow, clear methodology, all those things, you cannot explain where the results are coming from. It's just something that kind of magically arrives sometimes. So you need to make sure that we have all those important things mentioned here earlier in place, and then you need people with skills to utilize it from there. I think that that the UK is a really good example of how you can speed up some of the processes. If you're doing a carbon quantification in the UK, I will guarantee you, at least for me, it's the largest bill of quantity you'll ever see. They have an unreal amount of different things that they report on, and having something that can help you automatically read and sort and help quantify very large amounts of data and bill of quantities into something is something that will speed up the work with carbon quantification, make it much more accessible, not to be big of a cost, and help, something that we can do on a lot more projects than you normally do. So that's a very low-hanging fruit to be going for here. Of course, if you utilize all this more, we will end up with a lot of experiences, and I want to be able to share all those good solutions, like experiences as mentioned before. If we can share the good solutions, I think that is key. And maybe in FIDIC Regie and with the carbon management framework that we have and all those important things, the good solutions, the cure to overuse of resources should be shared. It shouldn't be something that we compete on. We should be competing on excellent engineering solutions and not carbon quantification, for example. So an AI can help with optimization, can help with all of this. But there's not the formula that's just simply add AI and everything will be great. It's quality data, clear methods, strong workflow, skilled people, transparent governance, all of this. And then we can accelerate the way we work.
Thank you, Andreas. And I'd like to bring the final part of our discussion back to the longer term picture, resilience, infrastructure performance, and how the industry prepares for what comes next. So Andreas, I'll stay with you on this. What's your view on organizations connecting sustainability with resilience and long-term infrastructure performance and practice?
I think that in many ways, resilience is a little bit the new sustainability, if you will. In my world, in my view, a sustainable asset also has to perform over time with a long-term perspective. So we need to optimize carbon resource consumption. It needs to be resilient towards the climate change that we see, the different use cases that we might see, all the other social aspects that it's connected to. Maintenance needs to be optimized, of course. There's all these things that together will add long-term value. And that to me is a resilient project. If you're missing some of this, it's not truly resilient. But then again, I would also say it's not truly sustainable. So it's a real, they're both connected here, I would say. It's also a risk manager. If you are to decide what to invest in, or if you're an asset owner, you would want to have something that is as resilient as possible, as sustainable as possible from the terms that we've just described here. So there's longer assets life, there is easier repair, easier reuse, maybe even much greater adaptability for future use and needs. I think that will be it.
Thank you. Thank you, Andreas. And Nicola, do you want to add something to this from your perspective?
Yes, I think resilience, at least to us, is a very clear methodology. So it's an additional brick into the engineering system to prepare a project and be well adapted to the future climate and future risk. But as Andreas said, I mean, it should go together with mitigation. And mitigation and adaptation are hand in hand. There is no way to separate both. And the public debate at some point shifted from decarbonization to adaptation. It's a kind of a mistake. We should keep them very close one to the next, because if we don't do mitigation right now, we will have a very hard time for adaptation in decades. So this is sustainability now and tomorrow together. And this is definitely back to responsibility that I pointed before. We as engineers, as a constructor, as the industry policymakers, we need just to have a bit of responsibility in front of the today and the future.
Thank you, Nicola. And looking further ahead, infrastructure leaders are having to make lots of decisions in a context of continuing change, uncertainty. So there's climate regulation, technology, community needs. They always continue to evolve. So, Nicola, if I stay with you, and can you share with us your views on what trends should infrastructure leaders within this change happening and the uncertainty be paying particular attention to, and how can organizations better plan and design for this uncertainty?
Yes, as I said before, I think the consensus is very clear about what is happening and what should we do, and there is no more debates about that, and that is time for action. So action and responsibility, again, together, the way we work must evolve towards something with a few additional bricks that have to be invited in our workflows, in our processes, in our systems. And people should learn and educate themselves. So we can listen to, there are plenty of materials around, webinar, podcast, industry forums, FIDIC lessons, and I mean, plenty of good materials all around the place. So let's stay curious and let's adopt things that are relevant to each of our practices. And that would be my recommendation here.
Thank you, Nicola. And Marta, let me bring you in as well. What do you see as the most important developments that infrastructure leaders should be preparing for?
Yeah, three things I see converging, and Nicola mentioned this already, but I'll build on it. The idea that mitigation and adaptation must be considered together. Similarly, I'd say first, sustainability and resilience are also inseparable. You just don't really have one without the other. So I'd say infrastructure leaders today need to be recognizing that infrastructure designed and planned and built today needs to reduce environmental impacts now, as well as being able to adapt to future climate conditions. And Andreas touched on that, and so that's critical. Second, if you're in this industry and you either make data or provide data or somehow are trying to connect data, we know that there's a huge demand for trusted sustainability data. People want consistency, they want transparency, and they want confidence to know that if they're going to measure something around sustainability, that it's coming from a trusted source. And third, I'd say, we've talked about AI, it is accelerating expectations around access to insights, and it's driving this huge opportunity. But as AI adoption increases, interoperability becomes even more important. Organizations need that connected information, and they don't want it to be sort of separate or isolated. So I think ultimately for infrastructure, this really means designing assets, not just for all the conditions we know today or what historically came, but we really need to be thinking about climate-related issues, operational issues, and even community conditions that will need to perform for decades to come. So I think the organizations best positioned for this in the future are the ones that are investing in those data foundations. They're open to collaboration, and they're open to the ecosystems that make this all happen, which we've talked a lot about today.
Thank you, Marta. And we've covered a lot of ground today, from the pressures driving change to collaboration, technology, and AI, and ultimately how the industry can become more resilient and better prepared for the future. So let me finish with one practical question to all of you. If you could leave infrastructure leaders with one mindset shift and one practical step they can take in the next 6 months to move from ambition to action, what would they be? Andreas, let me start with you, and we have 1 minute, so please make it all very brief. Thank you.
Well, for me, what comes to mind here is that carbon management is not reporting. It shouldn't be considered reporting. It should be considered as a very important part of design. And I think design optimization is the biggest climate lever that we have. And early design integration is crucial.
Thank you. Nicola?
I would say that there is one topic we did not address today is about the financing gap in infrastructure. And I would reconnect both topics with saying that if we become expert and if we have a strong quantification, carbon quantification as our practice, then this can be monetized going further. And there are incentives to come once we have a very stable level of quantification and carbon measurement. So I would really invite everyone to measure the carbon properly.
Thank you. And Marta?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I would say start small and start somewhere. No matter where you are on the journey around sustainability, just don't bite off more than you can chew. Start small and start somewhere. Collaboration, like I said, is the new competitive advantage. So work across the industry, talk with your stakeholders, connect the technologies and the processes and the people to work together to their best advantage. You don't have to solve everything at once. I'll leave it at
Thank you very
that.
much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our speakers for the insights. Marta Bouchard from Autodesk, Nicolas Miraveles from Oris, and Andreas Lennet from Ramboll. Thank you also to all the contributions today. Apologies if we couldn't answer all of your questions, but I am aware that some of the questions were already embedded in our conversation. Please send us an email with your questions if you'd like us to take care of it. Please take a look at our website for the Global Infrastructure Conference of FIDIC happening in Delhi. This year in September, from 13th to 15th of September. And please keep an eye on the FIDIC website for a write-up of today's event. We'll also post the link to the webinar recording. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Basma.